Hello, Gospel Revolutionaries. This is Daniel Rouse. It's been a while since I've seen you here on Tuesday. Before we get started, if you like my shirt, it's the Your Righteous shirt from my good friend and longtime Gospel Revolutionary, Glenn Klein. Thank you, Glenn, for the nice shirt. I have been thinking about, speaking of Glenn Klein, he's been sharing a couple posts lately on the Gospel Revolution page. And a couple of the ones have really got my mind going. And I remember when Don and Mike had first introduced this to me, and that was dualism. I remember Mike and Don on the podcast years ago went through this series about dualism. And at that time, it was really revolutionary to my mind to think about if me and everybody and God are one, then what is all of this process of taking out dualism in our thinking, dualism in our spirituality, dualism in our belief system, doctrine, theology, so on and so forth. How do we take out dualism, and where can we find dualism? And what is dualism is anything that separates man from God. For instance, in the Old Testament, you had the high priest. You had a priesthood, which shows that there was a separation between man and God. And because there was a separation between man and God, now you need a priest. And we carried that into Christianity by saying you need a pastor, you need a shepherd, you need a prophet, and so on and so forth. But if you look at that, what is that? That's dualism. Because I am somehow not fully connected to God, I need another person to connect me to God. And I remember even teaching about the work of a pastor, as I once declared myself to be a pastor, and looking at the word. And I remember at one point I told my congregation that a pastor is a bridge between you and God. That's dualism. That's saying that there is still yet this separation between God and man. What is another instance of dualism? One of the ones that Glenn shared was the end of law and prophecy. If there's a law, there's dualism. If there's prophecy, there's dualism, because there's yet something to happen. There's yet something to come. Our perfection is yet to be established, and so on and so forth. So you see, all of these things are dualism. Judgment. Well, if God and I are one, then where's the judgment? And Michael blew our minds last week on the Tuesday show here, talking about that God's not showing you any mercy. Why is that? Because there's no more dualism. Because the mercy's been shown, the law's been put away with, judgments has been dealt with. And so as I was thinking about these posts that have been going out, and I've really been encouraged by them and appreciate the work that was put into it. One of the topics that both Michael and I have been discussing, and especially Michael, and that is this discussion about faith and hope. And Michael made the audacious statement that he doesn't believe. And the hope is come, and we've been saying that for years, and Paul's been saying it for even longer. Why do you hope for something that you've already had? What's the point of hoping if you've already got what you've been hoping for? See, that's dualism. If I'm expecting and I'm looking forward to the time that I'm going to become the righteousness of God, then I'm still looking at it dualistically. If I am still looking for being made one with God, then I'm still looking at it from a dualistic point of view. I want to talk to you for the next few minutes about belief. The end of faith, the end of belief. This is something that we have promoted in the Gospel Revolution for as long as I've been a part of it. I remember Michael, when I first came into the Gospel Revolution, he was doing the series on the failure of personal belief. And what blew my mind as a ex-Word of Faith pastor was not the attention that I read in context, all these verses that I made so personal, that it's my faith and my belief. What I discovered, as I said, as a Word of Faith pastor, was it wasn't about my faith. It was about the faith of Christ. And that is the revolution that took place in my mind in regarding faith and belief. So if it's Christ's faith that makes the difference, then my faith is meaningless. It's pointless. Now, there was a time in this dualistic period of time before the cross where faith played a role. If you go into the faith chapter in Hebrews chapter 11, that's what, I've known it for my whole life as the Hall of Faith, the Hall of Fame, the Hall of Faith. And you have all of these Bible heroes, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Noah, and the list just goes on, and then it goes on to all the people that are not mentioned specifically by name, but by what they did. And you have this entire list of believers, people who were in faith. And you know what's amazing about all of this is that even though they did all of that in faith, the Bible said that they did not receive the promise. Your faith will never be enough to lay hold of the promise. Now, that was another topic we went through. There's only one promise, and that's the promise of righteousness. The promise will never, ever, ever come to anybody based on their individual belief. It's not going to happen. It would be just as likely to say that gravity is not going to affect me because I don't believe in gravity. Because I believe that gravity is a made-up term. Just because that's my belief system doesn't change the fact that gravity is real and it has its impact on my life. Believe it or not, gravity is working against you, for you, however you want to look at it. Believe it or not, all of humanity has been made righteous through the faith of Jesus Christ. Believe it or not. Believe it or not, the entire human race is one with God. Not based on an individual personal belief system, but entirely based on the one person who could truly believe and the one person who could truly have faith in God and faith in God's promise. So at the conclusion of Hebrews chapter 11, it says that God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. So there was a time they lived, they died, they had a good testimony, but they did not receive the promise. Even though they had all of this through faith, God had provided something better. There's something better than personal faith. There's something better than personal believing. There's something better for you and the entire human race. Oh, this is my plea, this is my cry, is that religions around the world would understand that there is something better than their belief system. There is something better than their ability to believe in God. There's something greater. What is that something? I am so happy that we have learned to read in context. Because if we will just keep on reading, we will discover what that something better is. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1, therefore we also, since we're surrounded by such great cloud of witnesses, so all these have gone before us, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, so on and so forth. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. Now, this isn't saying to lay aside that personal sin. You know, again, we have personalized everything. Well, what's my sin that so easily ensnares me? Well, I just get road rage, or I'm a drunkard, or whatever you may categorize as your sin. That's not what he's saying here. He's saying that sin ensnares you. What is sin? Sin, not an individual action of sin. We're talking about sin, the noun. Let us lay aside that sin. Why? Why are we laying it aside all of a sudden? We're about to see it here in a minute, but I'm going to give you the preview. It's because it's done. Christ was the end of the law, and he was the end of sin. He was the end of unrighteousness. He was the end. Because there's something greater. So let's lay aside that whole idea about sin and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Oh, brother, we just got to keep on believing. We just got to keep on living right. We just got to keep on keeping on. Yeah, my gosh. Let's run the race that's set before us. I think it's going to kind of blow your mind what this race is. It's not living by faith. It's not trying to stop sinning. It's not trying to be Christ-like. It's not trying to do any of these things. What is the race that is set before us right now? The answer's right here in the very next verse. Looking. If you look that word up in the Greek, you can also see focus. Looking, let your focus be on Jesus. Not my faith, not my sin, not my fill in the blank, not my righteousness, not yada, 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 yada. Looking unto Jesus. My focus is now on Jesus. My race is now, what is my race? It's to keep my eyes fixed on Christ. Why? Who is this Christ? Who is this Jesus? He is the author and he is the finisher of faith. Now, if you're reading along, you might see that the word our is there before faith. The author and finisher of our faith. Now, if you have a Bible that does like what my Bible does, it's italicized. And what does that mean? If you read that in the beginning of the Bible, in the front end of here, it'll tell you that these italicized words were added to bring clarity or to attempt to bring clarity. What happened, though, on many of the times that these italicized words are added is they take away from the clarity, such in this case. Because nowhere is this talking about your or my faith. This is talking about Christ and all faith. So let's read it that way. Looking, focusing on Jesus, the author and finisher of faith. Did you hear that? Did you hear what I just said? What I just read? Jesus is not only the author. So let's look at that for a second. All of these people who lived by faith, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, who lived by faith, how did they do it? They did it because their story was written before the foundation of the world. It was predestined. There was a predestined plan that all of these Old Testament characters had to walk out. Even the whore. even the harlot. She had a part to walk out because her plan, her life was written. It was authored by the Word, Jesus, before the world was ever made. Wow. The author, and he started the story, and now he's brought the story to a conclusion. The Hebrews 11 heroes of faith, their stories didn't end with they hadn't received the promise. Their story didn't end there. There's a culmination. There's a conclusion. And you and I, through the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, we're included in that conclusion. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of God. As I get ready to wrap it up here, I want to bring into this thought that Jesus was the end of faith. Jesus was the finisher of faith. That word of finisher comes from the word tetelestai, one that if you follow the gospel revolution at all, it's a very familiar term. Tetelestai, it's done, it's complete. It's 100% whole up, sealed up, perfect, done. It's a done deal. If the faith of Christ is done and finished, then we've got nothing more to believe in. We've got nothing more to have faith in. Hebrews chapter 6 tells us that it's time to move on from the elementary principles of Christ, and let's move on to perfection. We're living in perfection. We're living in the finished work. So what is one of the things that we're supposed to move on from? We're supposed to move on from having faith in God. Well, if I don't have faith, if I don't believe, then what do I do? That's the rest, isn't it? There's nothing left to do. But we can be like the Apostle Paul and say, I endeavor to know nothing except Jesus Christ and him crucified. Did you hear what he said? To know. Not to believe in Jesus Christ and him crucified, but to know. To have actual knowledge of the death, burial, and completed work of Christ. And that work is not something based on my belief, my hope, my trust, whether or not I'm sinning. It's a done deal, folks. Faith and hope still rely on a dualism system. If I believe in God, this is what I taught for so many years. If I believe in God, I believe in my heart and confess with my mouth the Lord Jesus Christ. If I believe, Paul, in that passage in Romans chapter 10, was not teaching his message. He was saying, this is what everybody else is preaching. That you have to believe in your heart and confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus. And he goes on, if you just finish out that chapter, just read it in context. He goes on to say that God was found by those who didn't ask. And he said if faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God, his word has gone out into the entire world. It's already gone out. It's out there. And if it's out there and it's supposed to accomplish what it was sent to do, how come it's not doing it if it is the way you say it was? See, if my faith is the requirement for righteousness, then it's something that I have done to be made righteous. But if just like we took the actions and the deeds and our ability to follow the law, if we take all of that just like we throw into that believing, see, that's what religion says. And I'll tell you this about religion, is your faith will never be enough. I was born and raised hardcore Word of Faith. I was a hardcore Word of Faith. I'm a Rhema graduate, and I have a doctorate degree from Life Christian University, a Word of Faith university. I was hardcore Word of Faith. And what I discovered when I was honest about the belief system that was presented and the doctrines that were presented is, here's what I was left with. My faith will never be enough. You know, we were told, well, just start with the mustard seed of faith. Of course, we teach the prosperity message, just start with the dollar faith. And I remember one time thinking I had $50 faith because I could get $50 by faith just like that. Then I moved on to $100 faith, but somehow I couldn't get past the $100. The $1,000 faith, the $1 million faith. The only faith that mattered, and the life that I now live, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who gave his life for me. My life is not based on my faith. My life is based on the concluded faith of the Son of God who gave his life. My friends, learn to be free. You can come to the place of being free from belief. And you can enter into this wonderful world of knowledge. And here's the beautiful thing about knowledge. I was thinking about this earlier today. Our knowledge is ever changing and ever growing and ever advancing. The knowledge we have now is based on what we know now. But then when we learn something new, our knowledge changes or grows or expands. And to think that we would ever fully comprehend the vastness of being one with God and who God is and the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus and Christ and this whole story, to think that we are able to comprehend it in its entirety and just like that. But it's so much bigger, it's so much greater. I remember coming into the gospel revolution and I understood grace. And I saw how beautiful grace was. And I learned that I was righteous, and so was everybody else, through the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. And I remember sitting, and this was still when I was pastoring, I remember sitting at my desk and I thought, in my church, and I thought, oh my God, this is great. This is wonderful news. But what's left? What am I going to preach on? And here you hear Michael and I, probably week after week after week, just in amazement, the things that we are learning and coming to knowledge of. And none of it is based on a belief system. It's all based on knowledge. And we, here at the Gospel Revolution, and what we teach is the knowledge that's found in the Hebrew Scriptures, the law, the Psalms, and the prophets. That's our source. And upon that, we can build and expand and grow, and our knowledge will expand and grow. And it's wonderful to not live in a world of belief, but to know. As Barry just put here on the screen, knowing is based on factual truth with evidence. And that's what we have in the Hebrew Scriptures. Actual truth, factual truth, and we have evidence of it. I hope this will help you. I know, for me, and in my experience, belief was a work. My belief was never enough. And when I came to understand that it wasn't about my belief, but it was about the faith and the belief of Jesus Christ that really saved me, a load came off of me. And I walked into this realm now of knowing, not just believing that everybody one day could be saved, but knowing that all are righteous, holy, perfect, blameless. That you are righteous. I love you. God bless you.